Hello, my name is Leo Relas,
And I'm Heather Tosta.
and today we're going to be discussing chapters 4 and 5. So, chapter 4 is essentially about gathering material, understanding how to do your research efficiently and to your best knowledge. So, I want to start and begin talking about the main search engines that there is, which is Google, Bing, Yahoo, and Google Scholar. And I want to share how if you're struggling with your search, there's different tips and things that you could do that will make your search ultimately better. For example, you can narrow your search and you could change the search term where it allows you to make it more concise and precise to what exactly you're looking for. And a huge help when it comes to gathering material is what is called a virtual lab, and it's a search tool that provides internet technology and library techniques for collecting and using information. The main difference when using a virtual library is that it provides a narrow search within a fewer websites, and it has been reviewed by reliable and credible people, so you know that the information you're getting is more reliable. And at the bottom, I just listed a few reliable sources that could be useful not only to you, but within your learning experience. And the picture on the bottom right is just a picture of a computer, essentially just looking for online research. And following the next slide, I want to get to it. I want to discuss some of the tips when it comes to evaluating internet resources. For example, the first one is you could consider the source. Is it reliable? Does the author have strong credentials? Second is the source biased? Are they trying to sell you something that is not advertised? Like, for example, something that can help you for that is looking at the end of the tag, whether it's .com or org, as the information is way more credible as opposed to not having that. Um, for the third is determining whether the documented is outdated or not. And some of the things you could look for is current information. Has it been updated recently? Are the sources cited? Are they outdated? And then lastly is using reliable checking sites, because there's often times where people give a lot of claims, but you don't know if they're actually accurate or even real. So, for example, what you would do is you go to one of these sites and check if it's accurate or if it's even reliable. And for the next slide, um, I want to discuss some of the ways of gathering material, but in a different way, which is interviewing some experts. And before you go into your interview plan, I would suggest having a goal. Like, what's your intention of the interview? Understanding why you're going to the interview, who you're going to meet, and having questions ready that are going to help you in obtaining useful information, not only for your speech, but in the long run. And second, I want to talk about like acting professionally when taking an interview. For example, um, dressing accordingly, being on time, having irrelevant discussions and questions. These are all huge things that come into play when having an interview. And the last thing that I want to talk about is interviewing by email, because especially in the times like now with the virus, essentially everything is by email. So here are a few tips of how to become more successful in your interview. You could be more concise and brief. For example, you could be straightforward to the point and and try to proofread before sending it. I often find myself making that mistake where I just send it with a lot of errors and it just doesn't look professional. And the last thing I could give as a tip is don't ask so many questions. Like I said before, just be concise and precise and just try to get straightforward to it. And the last thing I want to touch upon is the picture in the bottom, where it's essentially just two people having an interview. But yeah, the goal for chapter 4 essentially was just learning and understanding how these things could be useful to you. Thank you. My name is Leo Relas, and chapter 4 was gathering material. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so now that we have talked about chapter 4, we're going to talk a little bit about chapter 5. And in chapter 5, we talk about how to use supporting materials effectively. So using examples competently, using statistics competently, and using testimony competently. A couple little terms that we're going to be talking about today are supporting materials, which are the examples, statistics, and testimony used to bolster a speaker's viewpoint. The examples, which are specific instances of a general category of objects, ideas, people, places, actions, experiences, or phenomena. And statistics are measures of what is true and factual expressed in numbers. Statistics can provide magnitude and frequency and allow comparisons. And last, testimony, which is derived from the Latin word witness. It is a first-hand account of events or the conclusions offered publicly by experts on a topic. So now into a little bit about what each one has. So when we're using examples competently, we need to look at the hypothetical examples. It could happen, could it happen, could it not? The real examples, it did happen. Brief examples. So the brief examples, you want to make short and to the point. Extended examples are when you tell a whole story. So you're sharing a whole story with us about what happened. Using examples effectively. So we want to make sure that to use examples effectively, we are choosing our examples carefully. So we want to use relevant examples. So we want to stay on point. When we get off on tangents, we tend to lose our audience. We want to choose vivid examples. So we want to create images, make our audience see what we're saying, and really be able to imagine what we're telling them. Use representative examples. So we want to reflect what's accurate. Stack examples. So if one example is not enough, maybe giving a couple accounts of what's going on, a couple of examples to really hit home and make our message really hit. And now going into statistics. So using statistics competently. The mean, we all learned mean, median, and mode in like grade school. So just finding the mean, the average statistics. The median and in the center statistic, so finding that statistic that's right in the middle, and the mode, the most frequent statistic that we're looking for. So now how to use statistics effectively beyond numbering numbers. So we can use accurate statistics accurately. So we want to make sure that we're not distorting our facts. We want to take into account, the book talked about a money statistic, but using inflation, taking inflation into account. So really making sure that we're not distorting our statistics, making our statistics concrete. So making meaningful numbers, finding meaningful numbers, making statistical comparisons, making sure we're gaining perspectives. Just like stacking examples, we can stack statistics and to create an impact, so give more than one statistic. We want to make sure we're using credible sources to build believability, kind of like Leo was talking about in chapter 4, finding those credible sources and making sure that those are credible and we are giving the right information out. And then now testing testimony. So types of testimony is relying on other people. Testimony of experts, we can look at experts and what they have to say, relying on those in the know, people who are experts in that field. An eyewitness testimony, so maybe someone who was there, you had to be there, taking into account what people are saying that were actually physically there. And also the testimony of non-experts, so ordinary people, adding color to events. We see all these different types of testimonies in the news, in newspapers, in all over. So just making sure that we're finding different testimonies depending on what the message we're trying to give. How to use testimonies effectively. We want to make sure we're quoting or paraphrasing accurately and considering the context of what we're saying. So we want to make sure everything that we're saying is accurate so we sound more reliable, more credible. Use qualified sources. So credibility matters. To make ourselves credible, we have to use credible sources. Again, kind of like Leo was talking about with chapter 4, making sure we have credibility, making sure that we are a credible speaker. And with that, that happens with our examples, with our statistics, and with our testimonies. This little chart is the one that was in our textbook. So it talks about how to create an oral citation of sources. So an expert source, if you're talking about a website, an academic journal, a television program. So just tailoring how you're talking to where your source is from. And finally, choosing interesting supporting materials. This is crucial and super, super important. So, the step one when choosing supporting materials, check their credibility and strength. Something really important about chapter 4 and chapter 5 is credibility. We want to make sure that we are credible as speakers, and to make sure that we are credible as speakers, we need to look at the sources that we are getting and look at the stats that we are getting and make sure that our information is credible so that we can then share credible information. So, first, make sure that you cite sources completely. Don't have vague references. You want to make sure that you are not being vague, that you are giving people a complete source. For example, have the name of the source, the qualifications of the source if it's not obvious, the specific publication or media citation, where the evidence can be found, and the relevant date of the publication. These are very important. The next thing you want to do is you want to achieve the power of three. So we talked about chapter 5, examples, stats, and quotes. And you want to make sure that you have all of these spread out in your chapter or in your speech. And so making sure that you have that power of three is really, really important to make your speech hit and to make it stick and to make it credible. And the book has an important checklist of items at the end before writing your speech. So check out that checklist, check out and make sure if you're hitting everything correctly and checking off all of those boxes. So, with that, we are finished with our presentation. We hope that you guys were able to learn some fun things about chapter 4 and 5. So, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.